How do you make your dreams a reality? Has it been very challenging? Why? The Dream to Rise podcast was created to inspire individuals on their journeys of personal and professional growth. Recognizing the power of dreams and aspirations, this podcast aims to share authentic stories, valuable insights, and transformative strategies from a diverse range of guests. It serves as a platform for encouraging listeners to overcome obstacles, embrace their potential, and pursue their passions with purpose and determination. Ultimately, empowering them to turn their dreams into reality. Let us listen to our guest and learn from their story. Welcome to our Dream to Rise. And our guest, Xanet Pailet, is a nationally recognized sex and intimacy coach, best-selling author of Living an Orgasmic Life and the Sex and Intimacy Repair Kit. Oh, wow, kind of intriguing. So curious about this now. And the founder of Passionate Intimacy Retreats, where she has led over 100 couples intimacy retreats after living a 26-year sexless marriage and a high-powered legal career. Xanet now helps committed couples who feel stuck, disconnected, or in conflict transform their relationships into ones filled with intimacy, safety, passion, and joy. Through private and international group retreats, she shows couples how to create emotional and sexual connection that lasts. If you've ever wondered what it takes to truly reignite your relationship and keep the flame alive, this is the time for you to tune in and see and discover through our discussion. I'm sure you don't want to miss this. Okay, without further ado, I would just like to introduce to you my guest, Xanet Pailet. Okay.
Beautiful.
I got
You
thank you. How are you, Xanet?
I am doing great, Cynthia. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited about having this conversation with you and all of your listeners. And I know you said this isn't a topic that you normally talk about. So I'm even more excited to be able to share information because I'm so passionate about it.
Actually, when you connected with me, I was having the second thoughts. Oh, should she be my guest? Because I don't know how I could, because this could be part of the love and relationship. And sex is not always often discussed,
Yes.
especially during my generation.
And mine.
Yes, it's a taboo. But now I think the younger generation are more open to this. And I know that a lot of problems in marriages, well, I could see and I've observed that sex is also a problem that makes the marriage not work. So let's get the ball rolling. And Xanet, so I would just like to ask, what inspired you to become a sex and intimacy coach? What was your journey been like?
Yeah, thank you so much for asking. Well, it's been a very interesting journey. As you said, I started out as a healthcare lawyer. So I never really anticipated when I thought about your program and your podcast, like Dream to Rise and what your dream is. I never dreamed about being a sex and intimacy coach, right? That was never ever in my dreams. However, life has an interesting way of moving you in a direction. For me, this direction made sense because I lived in a sexless marriage for over 26 years. Well, we had some sex, but not a lot. I have two children, but most of it was basically sexless. And I also brought into the relationship some of my own childhood wounds around sexuality and my body. And so it just became a situation in which sex was painful, was very uncomfortable for me. There was no pleasure. I didn't have any orgasms. And there was just a lot of tension and drama around it. And so it was very easy just to shut it down when I was like in my early 30s, because I got married very young at 24. And, I essentially took all of my energy and threw it into my business and threw it into my children and threw it into some of my hobbies. I was living in New York City and didn't really think about my sex life at all until one day I realized that this wasn't normal. Like the life that I was living wasn't actually normal. My friends were in relationships, many of them separated, but they were in relationships and they were having and seemingly enjoying their sex life. And I recognized that I needed to make a change. And as often happens in long-term relationships where the sexuality dies and the intimacy dies and the friendship dies, and essentially we were just parents, a very good familial unit, but there was no emotional connection between the two of us either. And the love just withered away, I guess would be the way to say it. So pretty much when I turned 50, I made the decision, which I think my, at the time, ex-husband was very supportive of, that we separate, like that we're done, we move on, which was a very hard decision for me to make for my own, my own fears around being a single woman. And my own fears around, like, is anybody going to want to date me? Like, how do I explain to some other person that, I just don't have sex? Which made me realize I had to really take a very hard look at this issue for myself and kind of figure out what was going on in Xanet's life and in Xanet's body, that this was such a huge piece for me. And that was really the beginning of the journey to my sexual awakening and my sexual healing, which took a long period of time because I was so shut down around my body and my sexuality and so scared about facing the unknown.
But when you mentioned, so you were saying that it was you who was really having that problem, not your husband. How many children do you have?
Two.
But you were able to have.
Yeah, I mean, we were able to have sex sometimes, a little bit in the beginning when I was younger, but again, it was never pleasurable. It was never enjoyable. It was never something that I felt good about. I had so much anxiety about it. I knew I wanted to have children. So, got to have, at least at that point, you had to have sex in order to have kids. And so I was able to allow that to happen in myself. But it was not something I wanted to continue to participate in. My body just shut down. It refused. It was like, nope, this is not good.
So
and that happens a lot to women. It's not unusual. Yeah.
Well, I know, especially for women, when they reach menopause, that's the time wherein you tend to, stay away from sex because it is uncomfortable because of the changes in the body, the dryness and everything. So, but you were still young when you...
I was very young, yeah. So I had a condition called vaginismus, which is basically an involuntary spasm or tightening of the pelvic floor muscle and the vagina. So that penetration was very, very painful. And it wasn't physical. I mean, it was a physical manifestation of psychological trauma, basically. It's psychological and emotional trauma, as well as some trauma at the hands of physicians as well, in trying to help me out, in trying to fix, I had a lot of urinary infection. So in trying to fix that, they actually caused more trauma to my body. And so my body was just like, I don't want anybody touching me down there because it doesn't feel good and it usually creates problems and pain, right? Yeah. So this was my body sort of taking over, if you will, in what I didn't understand, but I do now, was a very protective mode. But at the time, it just felt like I was being betrayed by my body.
Oh, I see. Are you now in a relationship?
I am.
I so how were you able to overcome this? Now you've entered in a relationship.
Yeah, and I've been in a number since I left that marriage. I I did a lot of work psychologically on the trauma part to understand what was happening for me. And it wasn't, I know you expressed that you had some of your own trauma, but for me, I wasn't abused at the hands of anyone. There was just a lot of anxiety and shame around my body and around my sexuality that started very young, when certain experiences, like I got caught playing doctor with a girlfriend in first grade, and got really shamed for it. And so very early on, I got the message that anything having to do with your genitals was bad and was dirty. And that never really changed, to be honest with you.
Up to now, it's always
Right.
an issue. Yeah.
So I had to go through that healing, that understanding of where these experiences came from. I had to forgive myself of my guilt that I experienced for my own actions, which, took a long time. And then I had to have some positive sexual experiences very slowly and gently, where I started to understand that, oh, I'm not broken, because I felt like I was broken, but that, my body was just protecting me. And now my body doesn't need to protect me anymore. That's 30 years old. And I can actually allow my body to open up to pleasure. But it was a long journey to get there.
So it was really the inner healing that you needed for you to really overcome this blockage, which has been
Mm-hmm.
stopping you from entering into a new relationship or
Yeah.
being open to this kind of discussion. I would just like to, I mentioned about intimacy, no? How would you define intimacy? Because you need intimacy to build relationship,
Mm-hmm.
especially when for a young couple who's just starting, and me raised in a older generation wherein female should not initiate because you might be judged as being cheap or something like that. Or I come from a different culture from the Philippines. That's how they judge people.
Yeah.
So it was hard for females to initiate or even to hold hands. For
Mm-hmm.
us, it's a no-no. And
Yeah.
so I don't know how, especially now, there's this interracial relationships now going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
How will you, or what advice will you be able to share to those who comes from a very conservative family to and then married to an American, and then, hey, this is natural, this is normal because society dictates.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, yeah, you're touching such a great point. So we all get a lot of cultural conditioning, societal conditioning, right? About, especially for women, about, keeping your legs shut and not being a whore and not having sex before marriage, or in your
yeah.
case, not even holding hands,
Uh-huh.
right? And we have to understand, right, that may not necessarily be our desires, that is being imposed upon us by others, right? They are essentially a set of perhaps false beliefs that we have taken on. And then I like to, allow people to really look at, where is that coming from? Like, who gave me those messages? Is it from my family? Is it from the church?
Yes.
Is it from the culture that I grew up in? Right. So first, I call it your sexual blueprint, understanding what your sexual blueprint is, because whatever that is, you take that into your adult life. Whatever happened, those messages you received as a child, as a young girl, going through puberty, you take that into your adult life. And then we have to say, okay, is that my belief or is that somebody else's belief? And if it's not my belief, can I just give myself permission to let that belief go, to understand that that was something imposed upon me that I don't need to take into my new relationship? And again, there's a lot of inner work around that. And there's a lot of communication in any relationship, whether you're just starting out and you're young or you're midlife and you're in a new relationship or you're in a long-term relationship, of being able to talk about some of that conditioning that you both had and how that impacts your relationship, your intimacy, your belief around your body and sexuality. Everything starts with communication, right? That really is the foundational element of creating a strong, intimate, healthy relationship.
But how can you, for example, what excuse now will you say? Of course, you mentioned about communication. How long will that last? I mean, for the other partner to be patient enough to understand your situation. Oh, no sex first before marriage. So how will you be able to explain that to the guy and hoping the guy would understand?
Well,
Because
I mean, if that's your belief, then you would, I think, only want to be in a relationship with somebody who accepts you for that belief and loves you for that and is aligned with that. If there's not a lot of alignment, if there's somebody who does not feel that way and you feel strongly that way, then there's got to be a conversation around, can we continue this relationship? What are the constraints that we have? What type of compromises are we willing to make? But I feel really strongly that around issues of consent and boundaries, that there really has to be very good alignment between the partners so that both of your wishes and desires are respected, and that you can embrace each other for who you actually are and understand each other for who you actually are.
I agree. So what are some of the common misconceptions of about sex and intimacy?
I think there's a lot of misconceptions around sex and intimacy. I wrote a whole book about it.
Uh-huh.
Two, actually. So in the context of a long-term relationship, I think that what I see most commonly really creating problems in relationships is the lack of true intimacy with partners, the lack of really being emotionally connected. And I think that's a big misconception, that, you can have a really strong relationship without having an emotional connection. Just because you have sex a lot does not necessarily make you feel closer to that partner and emotionally connected to that partner. And sometimes a lot of people, especially women, end up having sex with their partner out of obligation or out of fear that if they don't, they're going to lose that partner, right? That's a very unhealthy place to be, because over time, not only do you feel less connected to your partner, but you also start building up a lot of resentment. Mm-hmm. Because what all humans want in any type of relationship is to be seen, to be understood, to be accepted and loved for who they are, with all of their fatal flaws, which we all have, and all of the childhood wounds that we bring into relationship, whether it's the first time we're in relationship or the 10th time we're in relationship, we still bring those childhood wounds in. And that's what I think, that is what true intimacy actually is. When I say the word intimacy, Cynthia, I like to break it down phonetically: into me see, into me see. So intimacy means that I allow you to see into me and I get to see into you. who
I
we
like
are,
that.
right, at a very authentic, vulnerable level, which can be terrifying to allow somebody in to see your shame, your guilt, your wounds. But that's what really creates deep emotional connection, which is the foundation for a great sex life.
What can you say about guys? Because I've talked to several guys, because we are not aligned in terms of how we think, right? The guys, as what you have mentioned, the ladies are they're after into their emotions, emotional connection, and so on, and that's how they show their love. No, when they're emotionally connected. But the guys, I don't know if it's when they have sex, that's where they find their chemistry is their chemistry. I don't know if this is true or not.
Mm,
And then they will just continue. If not, then they'll stop. And that's when the start of ghosting is. I don't
mm, mm. Um, so I think, in general, men in this country and certainly in the Asian culture as well have really been socialized to not connect with their emotions, not safe for them to show anything but anger for a lot of men, not safe to show fear because that, makes you less of a man, not safe to show shame. And so I honestly believe that men desperately also crave emotional connection with their partner. They just don't know how to access it. And for a lot of men, they access it through physical intimacy. So a lot of men feel more intimately connected with their partner, more emotionally open after they've been physically intimate with them. And for women, it's exactly the opposite, that we tend to need to feel more emotionally connected to our partner before we really want to be physically intimate, right? So
know.
there's definitely a struggle that goes on there. But I've worked with so many couples, and, and the men ultimately, when they feel what it's like to have that emotional connection, through coaching, through my retreats, like something deep inside of them shifts because they also want to feel like seen and understood and appreciated, which so many men I feel don't feel that way from their partner. So the disconnect goes both ways. And when you really prod into it, when you pry, men will open up around that as well. So I don't think it's one way. I think it's just the maybe macho exterior that they need to show because it's very scary to show the vulnerable little boy. But they all have that little boy in them that's scared or ashamed of something.
Yeah, because I know the guys were, well, as expected by the society, they should be the head of the family that shows the who will protect and
Yep.
who has that, well, not really power, but then he should be given that strength to really take care of the family and not show emotions.
Yep.
Oh my. And that's what I don't like.
Yeah. It's very, very challenging for we have to be
Challenging.
very, very compassionate to our male partners because of the way
Uh-huh.
they've been socialized, but give them opportunities and model to them, you know, true intimacy is like, what it's like to be vulnerable, what it's like to share feelings without overwhelming them, to share feelings without blaming them,
How can
right?
you do that? How can you uh,
And
give some tips on that? I mean, to encourage them that just be vulnerable because they always have that tall wall, not really exposing themselves. But
yeah, I
deep
mean,
inside, they're really scared.
inside they're really scared. And sometimes I'll say that, wow, I bet this is really scary for you to think this or to talk about this, right? To acknowledge, like, this is hard. Hey, it's hard for me too. I'm scared too. We're about to talk about something that could affect our future. And it's really scary to see it. Are you scared about it too? Like if I bring this topic up, right? And so trying to, I think I help men be able to express those feelings by giving them space to show the feelings, and also modeling how scared I am, right? Like, I know this is hard. It's hard for me. I bet it's hard for you. Oh, this is a hard place we're both in. This is really hard, right? Making it human, right? Because, I think that when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we are actually allowing our partner to see that we have the same flaws. We're just as screwed up as they are. Right. And giving them permission to be like, yeah, like, wow, we both have a lot of problems. I get it. Right. Allows more of there being more of an even playing field, if you will, between two people.
Wonderful. So I was about to ask, how do communication and consent play a role in fostering a healthy sexual relationship? So I think you've mentioned that. You've given me some ideas about that. It's through communication and the model. Oh, yeah.
Totally talking about it. And, my new book that just came out, the Sex and Intimacy Repair Kit, has, oh my God, probably 25 different practical exercises and tips that couples can use in order to learn how to have better communication, how to be vulnerable with each other, what intimacy feels like. Because, all of these things that we're talking about, being intimate, vulnerability, different types of, we haven't even talked about this, but types of physical skills, right? How to have great sex, like all of these are skills that can be learned. Some people are more intuitive and it comes easier, but there's nothing here that isn't a skill that can't be learned. And what I do in this book is I break it down kind of step by step by step, so it doesn't feel overwhelming. Right.
What example of that physical exercise?
So a physical exercise that is very, very powerful is just to sit and be in eye contact with your partner without any words for a minute or two. Just to sit and look in each other's eyes, because the eyes are really the emotional center. That is where, that's how we show our emotions. Our eyes speak. Our emotions are spoken through our eyes, right? Yes. And just to sit and look in each other's eyes and just be with what you see, the person that you see, and what people are shocked at the feelings that start coming up when they do that, because we're very bad in this society of maintaining eye contact in general, because it's a very vulnerable thing to do. And it's especially vulnerable with a partner, right? So just sitting there and being with each other, and what I call a tuning, right? Like finding where they're at and finding where you're at and trying to find that same place creates a lot of connection. Another thing that can be really helpful is a very long melting hug. A hug. Most often the hugs are very, very short, but if you just allow yourself without words to just like feel each other's bodies and hug each other for a couple of minutes and start to notice how you start breathing together again, there's a physical attunement that starts happening that creates connection with another person.
Wonderful. Those are simple things, right?
Correct.
Which each one can do.
Yes.
And do you think automatically it could lead to something, the sexual connection?
Sometimes it does, because you feel more physically attuned to your partner, you feel more seen, more vulnerable, you feel like they're being more vulnerable, and that just opens up the doorway to like, oh, now I can allow myself to be more vulnerable physically when I feel more of that emotional connection. So often it does open up a door to better sex.
Wonderful. I don't know if you're open also to your children, no, about this one.
Yeah.
So, how do you recommend approaching intimacy after having children or undergoing significant life changes? I mean,
With
after having children, yeah.
okay. Well, um, children can screw up marriages. We know that. They can mess with people's sex lives. We know that. So again, recognizing it, communicating around it. Other types of transitions, going through menopause, having some sort of physical issues arise, also can affect, your sex life and your physical intimacy. So there's a number of ways to address it. One is just to begin to first acknowledge it. Like, yeah, we've got these little kids. I've got a baby on my breast at all times. I don't really want to be touched. Like it just may take a while for things to be able to shift back. That's especially important and hard for new moms, right? And, communicating with your partner, like, yeah, this is, to be very vulnerable and honest, like I've just went through a whole thing that I had to have pelvic surgery. So my partner and I have not had much of a sex life for the last 3-4 months. And it's been really hard for both of us. And it's impacted our relationship. Like we both feel it, but at least we've been able to talk about it, right? And we've been able to try our best to make time for cuddling, for kissing, for me, doing things to him that he likes, even though my body's kind of mostly been off limits, right? And so it all comes down to communication of, acknowledging, yes, sometimes bodies get messed up. Sometimes things become painful. People get all sorts of different diagnoses, but it doesn't have to, it may change your sex life for a while, for a period of time. Maybe we have to do different things. We have to find different ways to connect, right? Maybe for some period of time, there does need to be like no sex really. But we're okay with that, right? Because we're talking about it and we're making sure that like if I have a need, that I can meet it. If he has a need, he can meet it, right? It's not the unexpressed desires, it's out in the open, and there's a lot of communication. And again, that's why I said communication is the bedrock of, really healthy sexual relationship.
Wonderful. So I was about to ask the proper age for the children to be on about
sex.
About sex, yes.
Wow. Okay. So I think that varies from, that's a personal decision. I think a lot of, there's a lot of parents that I know of, when they're having a baby, they will, if they have even if they have a toddler, right, or a 4-year-old, they start having a little bit of conversation about how our babies are born, right? So and again, some families will use anatomically correct words constantly, right? But to really talk about like sexuality, that usually happens around 11 or 12. And I, unfortunately, given the way in which sex education has been so scaled back in public schools, and certainly a lot of private schools as well, it's kind of incumbent upon the parents to start to have that conversation with their children, right? In as honest a way, as possible, especially as, the bodies are changing and as they get older and become more potentially sexually active, then having conversations for their daughters about like teaching them about masturbation, teaching them about vibrators, making sure that they understand that, when they are sexually active, they have to be able to communicate with their partner what feels good, what doesn't feel good, that they're entitled to pleasure, that it's not all just for the boys, pleasure and enjoyment, right? Like, so really empowering, especially young women, young ladies, young teenagers, to be able to speak up for themselves and to be able to, understand their body and their sexuality in a way in which we were never taught about it,
Yes.
most of us in our generation,
Uh-huh.
in a much, healthier way.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So now we're into this social media world, no? The
Yes.
technology. Now, what are your thoughts on the impact of technology and social media on modern intimacy and relationships?
It's such a great question. Well, we could do a whole podcast on that.
Uh-huh.
I think time will tell. I mean, on one hand, what I see in the younger generation is that they're a lot more sex positive. They're a lot more sex curious. They have a lot less shame talking about sex when things go wrong, talking about it. Like they're not sort of holding back. So I think that's in a way certainly healthier. I certainly, like many of us, have concerns about the impact of artificial intelligence on relationships and intimacy. We're all reading about, and many of us already have some sort of like relationship with our AI chatbots where we ask them for advice, but we certainly know that there are people that are having, quote, romantic relationships with their chatbots. And that's not just out of the movie Her, but that's actually happening in real life. And then there's, sex robots that are becoming very humanoid. So I don't know. The fact that so many kids are online and not having one-on-one interactions with people in a room, in real time, I think definitely could be having an impact on what intimacy looks like for them in some ways. But I think we don't know. I don't think we know the answer to that yet. I think that's something that's an evolving story. I do think that for some men and young boys, the easy access to pornography has made not only intimacy, but really sex become very, that's how they're learning to have sex. And it's not realistic as to how bodies actually look and how they act and what people want. And that's been going on forever, even since like the advent of Playboy magazine, right? It's just a lot more graphic and realistic and much more accessible now than it was. So do I think there are challenges? Yes, but I also think that there's hope, because I think there's a lot more gender flexibility. Like it's just a different, people in their 20s are growing up in just a very, very different era.
Exactly. And I could see that it's so easy for them to enter into a relationship and then suddenly separate. And I could see that the females or the women are the losing they are the losing end. So I don't know how we can help support this. I don't know, huh? I still prefer the traditional type.
I mean, I think there's lots of different ways in which you can create a relationship. There are many, many women who are very happy just having men who they can just have sex with and then move on to somebody else, and that's really what they want at a particular time in their life. And there are other women who want more of the traditional type of, relationships. So, I mean, I think the best way to support it is to support people where they are, not to try very hard not to judge people for what their choices are. I like to think about empowering young people to be able to make really healthy, positive choices around their sexuality, and for us to be able to support them in whatever that choice happens to be, recognizing that we all change,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
We all change. I've had clients who are like, sometimes with women, sometimes I'm with men. I'm like, great, like whatever works for you works for you.
Yeah. If you feel that sense of happiness and
Yeah,
fulfillment to a particular person, why not? Go ahead.
totally,
Mm.
totally.
So, what's your goals now for the next 12 months?
Oh, I know you were
What
going to
are your
ask me
goals?
this question. Oh God, I'm really bad with goals. I'm not a good goal person, but I do have this book that's just come out.
Uh-huh.
So one of my goals is, I don't know when, I'm not sure when this is airing, but the book either has comes out in March. One of my goals is for it to become a bestseller, like my first book was, but really for it to get very wide recognition and support, because I think it's an unusual book. It's very comprehensive in a way that a lot of other self-help books on relationships aren't. So I would say that is probably one of my big goals that I've been working towards for 2026.
Okay, wonderful. And what do you think would be the major roadblock in achieving
I
this?
mean, the major roadblock is always me, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Uh-huh.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I've had a lot of burnout this year. Am I too burned out to like, devote all of my time and attention and energy that's needed in order to help market this book? Um,
Mhm.
and I think that's probably, I am always, if there's a roadblock, it always comes down to me.
Yes, I agree. I think most of the time that's always our problem. That's why when we create our dream, it stays as a fantasy rather than making them a reality. But the
Absolutely.
most important thing is we're taking action.
Yes.
Though it's baby steps, they are baby steps, it could still lead towards your goal. Uh,
Yes.
Wonderful. So, what simple advice would you like to share with our listeners, or probably a message would you like to share with individuals who may feel ashamed or embarrassed about their sexual desires? Since this is the topic.
Oh, message I want to share, especially for those who are listening who feel ashamed about their sexual desires, is to truly understand that pleasure is your birthright, that you were born to be able to experience pleasure during your entire life,
Mhm.
and that nothing should really hold you back from that. And if there's something holding you back from that, then you should go and find, a coach, resources, support to be able to overcome that, because you're entitled to experience pleasure. It's a
Exactly.
very, very important thing.
Exactly. Having a coach is very important. Why stay stuck in that situation if you could enjoy your life fully,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
Why wait for that time? And as what I always say, time is limited. Why not use their time wisely?
Great.
How can they connect with you?
Yeah, so the best way to reach me is to go to this website, which is howtoimprovemylovelife.com. Howtoimprovemylovelife.com. And there you will find a very fun and quick intimacy equation quiz where you're going to learn what your intimacy type is, which is also another way to start the conversation with your partner. Like, hey, looks like my intimacy type is I'm an emotional person. Let's look at yours. Why don't you take the quiz? Great way to start that conversation. And you will be able to connect with me that way.
Do you have Facebook account wherein they could
Uh,
connect?
yeah.
Maybe that.
I can send all that to
Uh-huh.
the notes. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, I'm on YouTube. So yeah, you'll be able to find me. I have all sorts of different handles and
So
different.
should we just look up, for example, on Facebook, Xanet,
Xanet
under your
Pay,
name?
my name, Xanet Pailet, or Power of Pleasure is my Facebook business account.
Mm-hmm.
And Instagram, it's at Xanet POP. And I think YouTube is Power of Pleasure.
Okay.
But if you put in Xanet and you spell it correctly with an Xanet, I'm probably the only person in the world with that name.
Yes, that's why I was
Very, very
difficult
easy to find. Very easy to find me.
to pronounce it. But you know what, Janae, I'm truly grateful that you have connected with me. And
Thank
it
you,
was so
Cynthia.
nice to meet you. An honor to our first time topic to be discussed in my podcast.
Awesome. There's got there everybody. You're no longer virgins. Like pop your cherries.
So thank you so much. I know you have an appointment at 2. So again, thank you so much, and
Thank you,
we'll keep in
Cynthia.
touch again. And to
Yes.
our listeners, till our next episode. Have a great day. Bye. So.